Assalamu alaikum, fam. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing reading of St. Augustine's Confessions. It's very thought-provoking, makes us have a lot of introspection. Let's continue. Okay. Do heaven and earth then contain the whole of you, since you feel them? Now, this is no. We would know, obviously no, because if they're able to contain the whole, that would be quite small, right? If you have something huge and then here's earth and Allah's over it, I mean, just because this small dimension is able to have a portion of Allah in it doesn't mean that then is the whole. I mean, nothing can contain Allah Azza wa Jal. Immeasurable. Allah is immeasurable. So I don't think so. Is some part of you left over because they're too small to hold you? I would say, well, obviously. I mean, semantically, someone could say, oh, can't the Creator portion himself in any degree? I don't think that's something that we ever have an answer to. If Allah wanted to encapsulate himself into this tiny rock size or go to the size of the cosmos, I think that comes from a sort of strange, cartoonish way of looking at how will can be turned into different proportions. But Allah is capable of everything. Nothing is out of the dominion of control of Allah Subhanahu. So then someone would say, well, can he make something large enough to hold him? That's been a paradoxical question, but to go into something that can hold you is to limit you, and nothing that is wise would limit themselves. And if God is the most wise, he would never create something to put him in that would lessen his magnificence. That's what I'd say. But Allah knows best. If this is so, when you have filled heaven and earth, does that part of you which remains flow over into some other place? Or is it that you have no need to be contained in anything? Well, I would say, yeah, there's no need for the Creator to be contained in anything. We're contained on earth because, who knows what we would do if we went to space, Well, earth, one could argue, is just perfect habitat for us, even if it has, insects, poisonous plants, earthquakes, corruption. Still, it's our home. Because you contain all things in yourself and feel them by reason of the very fact that you contain them. Well, you contain all things in yourself, meaning that there's the power, the dominion, and the control. Feel them by reason, so everything was created with a cause, right? Of the very fact that you contain them. Well, he contains the authority over us, contains our destiny, right? For the things which you feel, by containing them, do not sustain and support you as a water vessel supports the liquid which fills it. Exactly, Allah is free of need. It's not that same type of relationship of a ship on sea. Even if they were broken to pieces, you would not flow out of them and away. Well, exactly. I would argue that nothing is comparable to Allah Subhanahu. So if something got broken, high above is He. And when you pour yourself out over us, you are not drawn down to us, but draw us up to yourself. Now this is a unique way to look at it. Pouring himself out. So the sort of will high above. We must come closer to God. But then there is, if you draw closer, Allah draws closer. Very interesting. You are not scattered away, but you gather us together. Yeah, God is not scattered. It's all-encompassing, unified, a solid, monotheistic unit. Now, of perfection. To be scattered is less perfect. And Allah is the most perfect. Right? And will be gathered together on the day of judgment. You feel all things, but do you feel them with your whole self? Well, no, because then that would mean something would be big enough to have the whole self put in there. Or is it that the whole of creation is too small to hold you? Well, I would say, yeah. I mean, our creation is not that big for us because we're so tiny, but come on. And therefore holds only a part of you. I wouldn't say holds any of it. I'd say just a reflection of an essence of God. And is this same part of you present in all things at once? Same part. Now, this is interesting. So this sounds almost paganistic in a way, because it's like the Native Americans felt like God is in the trees, God is in the rocks. But I think you can recognize the ayat, signs, proof, evidences of God without thinking that they, like, God is present in that. But we're looking at Catholics here. Same part, the same part of his essence. Well, it's all about the will of creation. So each item worships in its own way. And if we were created to worship, we were created in a way that will facilitate that. So it's a part of us that is useful in terms of worship and magnifying the praises of Allah subhanahu. But I wouldn't say it's a part of Allah in us, but rather abilities he has placed in us that are a sign of what he's done for us. Or do different things contain different parts of you? That's a plausible question for a Catholic, right? If they contend with this sort of essence being within, contained a human being and other objects, which part is being represented? Wisdom, ability, who knows? Greater or smaller according to their size. Does this mean that one part of you is greater and another smaller? Well, see how he said greater or smaller according to their size? Well, the wisdom a worm needs will be different than an oyster and different than a giraffe, right? Their abilities. So just because something has a different ability, I don't think it's greater or lesser, but rather what befits them and what they've been designed to do. We can measure each other like, hey, this person, they may be good at basket weaving. This person may be good at making arrows. This person may be good at math. But each skill has a point of utilization, I'd argue. So, it's relative to what needs to be used at the time. So if you took a Google person, put them in a cave, and said build a fire, and they're like, all I know how to do is censor people online, they're pretty much going to be really useless. But if you take somebody who knows how to, butcher a really big animal and cut up the meat and cook it, but then you place them in, as a secretary to some hotel, they might feel like, my skills are not really relevant to this situation. So I don't think it's really about greater or smaller, but rather utility and duty. Or are you present entirely everywhere at once? This is something that I've thought about. So, there is no place Allah isn't. So everywhere at once is plausible, yes. From my understanding of the Aqidah of Tawheed. Allah is His Lordship. Everything is at once everywhere. It's not like, He's at the left, to the right, the south, east. No. And no single thing contains the whole of you. Yeah, no single thing can contain the Maker. I just don't think it's possible. So his whole thing here was filling, containment, parts, degrees. Really interesting in getting these difficult questions out. His time period, they had a lot to think about. We all can think about these things, and at the end of the day, you say Allah knows best, and understand that we find out when we die.